Well, greetings and welcome to Scuba VBS here at the United Methodist Church of Johnstown. My name is Jeremy Scott. I am pastor here at the church, also sometimes known as the Chief Joy Officer. And it is great to get to greet you. And let me just start off this Parents podcast by saying thank you. Thank you to you as parents for all the work you have done to help bring up all these amazing kids that we get to bless this week. And thank you for trusting us with your kids. I hope while they are safely entrusted with us, learning to love God, love neighbor, and love themselves, that you are able to use that time well as well. Let me just also say right here at the beginning, we understand, and I as a parent myself understand, it's no small thing to trust somebody else with your kids. And that is not something that we take lightly, myself or my staff or anybody else here. And so thank you. Thank you for trusting us with not only the safety of your kids, but the opportunity to teach them. Throughout this Scuba VBS, we will be diving underwater, metaphorically, and learning a bunch of interesting and important stories about God, and really hoping and helping your kids learn a little bit more about themselves and who they are as one of God's beloved children. Because that's one of the things we fundamentally believe here at our church, is that everybody, whether they know it or not, choose to recognize it or not, is one of God's beloved children. That includes you, and that includes your kiddos too. So hopefully, if nothing else, if they take nothing else away from this week together, what they take away from it is that there is a group of people who love them, and that God loves them as well. Because that is the whole purpose of Vacation Bible School, is to take God's love and make it tangible. Turn it into something that your kiddos can see and taste and touch and smell in a new and exciting ways. Each day we will have a theme that the kids will learn, and there'll be a little phrase each day, and then there'll be a standard response throughout, kind of a call and response. And today's theme is God is a friend who is real. All the themes this week have a friendship theme, which is something hopefully that most kids understand. We hope that all of our little kids at least have a few friends in their lives so they know what a friend is, and hopefully learn to understand that God is one of their friends too. So this week, or this day, day one, it's God is a friend who is real. And when that phrase is said, your kids will be invited to respond with, "Thanks, God." Admittedly, not one of the most exciting responses that we've had in the various VBSs throughout the years, but it works. So if you want to kind of play along at home with them afterwards, if you want to, somehow work into your conversation with them after VBS, that phrase, "God is a friend who's real," you can respond with, "Thanks, God," and kind of encourage them to do that as well. Each day we'll have a Bible story. Today's story is the story of Elijah, or at least part of the story of Elijah. And the story of Elijah is really important. He was a prophet in the Old Testament very long ago, several centuries before the time of Christ. And he came at a time when the Israelites, God's people, were not really up to snuff, or really were doing the things that God wanted or needed them to do. And so Elijah was sent during the reign of King Ahab, whose name you might have heard before, who was not a particularly good king and wasn't particularly good at following the things that God wanted a king to do. And in fact, when the Israelites first decided they really wanted to have kings at all, God actually really discouraged them from that. They used to, before they had kings, have judges, but they saw all their neighbors around them had kings, and so they wanted to have kings like all of them had. And that didn't always go well, and a series of them were not particularly good. And Ahab was one of those kings that wasn't particularly good, and actually got infatuated less with the God of Israel and more with the gods of the other kingdoms around him. So Elijah comes at a time to help Ahab understand and God's people understand that they were off kind of on the wrong track. And there's this rather kind of famous story in the Bible where Elijah basically challenges his fellow prophets to a profit off. Kind of like a street basketball game for ancient prophets, but not really, but kind of. And he does this by saying, setting up some altars and saying, okay, you group of prophets to this one God, you pray for fire on your altar, and you prophets from this whole group of prophets, like dozens and dozens of them, of this other God, here's your altar, and you pray for fire. And then Elijah, to kind of make his point, takes just himself and this small altar, and then has it doused with water and rings water all around it. And rather predictably, the prophets of the other gods are not able to actually, make fire burn on the altar. But somehow Elijah, despite his being soaking wet, is able to do it. And he does that, and the whole idea at this point is that he's attempting to prove that those other gods from those other places are not real, and that the proper God of the Israelites is. Now, this is an interesting story because the whole idea fits with today's theme of God is a friend who is real. And that can be a hard thing for our kids today, because even as adults, we can struggle sometime with this idea of God being real, because while our faith tells us that God is something or someone who is always around us and always with us, God is not something that we can see, right? And so God isn't something that we can necessarily see, taste, touch, or smell in the way that we are trying to make God's love real for your kids this week. And that can be a challenge. Even as adults, that's a challenge. For kids who struggle to think, in those metaphorical ways that we as adults know how to do, it can even be a bigger challenge. So finding times and opportunities to point out God to people or God to our little ones is actually really important. But that can be hard because it's not like as adults we suddenly gain lenses on our eyes, let us see God, in that way. What we can do is what people have always done, which is to look for the evidence of God, right? The proof that God is around us. When Elijah even sets the altar on fire, that's not God. The fire isn't God. They're not seeing God. They're seeing God's work. And that is, for us as a parent, our opportunity with our kids to help them not necessarily see God, but to see God's work, those places in life where God's love for us and our God's love for them shines through, and we get a chance to see it and celebrate it and enjoy it. And in that enjoyment and seeing, it's important to point it out, especially for our kiddos, to point it out to them that, this not only is some great thing that we're experiencing, or, this fortune that we're, not necessarily fortune, but this, good time that we're experiencing, or whatever it is. This spiritual time, this special time that we are experiencing isn't just that, and it isn't just happenstance that it is wonderful. These are those little places where we get to see that, God's love for us. So those times that we need comforted when things aren't going well, and we feel the care and comfort from each other. It's as simple as a hug when we need it sometimes, or those when we get out into God's nature and beauty, which is something that we are blessed to be able to do fairly readily around us, and we get to marvel in God's creation. Making sure we take that little moment to not only marvel and see the beauty and help our kids, smell the roses, as it were, but also to feel grateful for the one who helped us have those roses to smell in the first place. So as a parent, that's maybe my invitation to you, is it can be hard to see God at work in the world sometimes because frankly, we're all so busy and our kids are busy too. I can't imagine, you couldn't believe how much stuff my 13-year-old daughter has had to do this summer. It doesn't feel like we have time to breathe a lot of times. So when we do get those moments of rest or those moments of joy or those moments of beauty, whatever it is, those good and wonderful things about life and the world that we enjoy, I invite you to take a minute, not only for yourself, find a moment to be thankful for it, to know that those things don't happen simply by happenstance, but that God actually is looking out for us and that God does care about us. And when we get to experience those moments, we get to experience them because God helped us be there and to do that. So hopefully we can all remember that God is a friend who is real and that we are all called to take the opportunity to remind ourselves of that on a regular basis. And that can be hard enough for us as adults if we are honest, even though we have a much better ability to perceive it. Our kids need it too. Now, let me just finish up these. These are always going to be, hopefully, fairly short. I know we're living busy lives right now. But let me also say, our kids also have an ability to see things in a way that we don't. And sometimes our job as a parent isn't necessarily to show them things that they are not seeing, but more to help them understand the things that they are. Because I do think our kids are a lot more inquisitive than we as adults sometimes tend to be. They're sometimes a little bit more tuned in and just more curious about the world. So perhaps the biggest opportunity of all that we have as parents is not to help our kids see something that they're not seeing, but help them instead to understand what they are seeing. So let me invite you to do this as well. The next time your kid goes, "Oh, wow," or sees or experiences something that really causes them to be interested or excited or enthusiastic, even if it's something that you and I have seen all the time. When they pick up the pine cone or whatever it is and get really excited about all the little bits and pieces in there, we've probably seen thousands of pine cones in our lives. They're easy to ignore, but the reality of a pine cone and the seeds inside of it and the life that comes from it and all that is also a little bit of a miracle. And the challenge for our kids usually may not be that they really aren't seeing, it's they don't always understand what they are seeing. So let me invite you to do that as well. When next time your kid goes, "Oh, wow," or "Look at that, Mom," or "Look at that, Dad," or "What is that over there?" Instead of just saying, "Well, it's a cloud," maybe think a little bit more deeply about what the miracle, small as it might seem, of what a cloud is, what comes from it. And in fact, how much of what around us would not be here if we didn't have water that evaporated and formed clouds and then rained back down on us and all those amazing things that the world around us does. So God is a friend that is real in my life, real in yours, every bit the same amount. Everybody gets equal claim to God and God's love. We're all equally made in God's image. And that is a true blessing that, because it is so normal for us, hopefully, we can sometimes take for granted. But maybe today and in the week to come, we can work to do a little better about that. Be a little more curious ourselves about where God is working in our lives. Again, thank you for being part of Vacation Bible School with us this week. Every day I'm going to post one of these, just kind of giving you a little heads up about what your kids have done and learned. I'm sure I don't want to spoil the surprises of all the different games and all the other things that they're going to do. So definitely ask them questions about that and the science experiments and everything that happens. Definitely ask some questions about that. But the thrust of the story that we're dealing with is the story of Elijah, that Elijah, showed up in Elijah's life in this big way with the fire. Now, God also showed up in Elijah's life in a pretty small way. And if your kids were paying attention during the story, hopefully they heard that part of the story too. So why don't you ask them about that? What are the 2 ways that God showed up in Elijah's life? And I will let them tell you the story of the other time, after the triumphant victory at the altars, that God showed up. Thanks for being with us. Thank you for trusting us. We'll see you tomorrow.